Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear listener, to Kardec Radio. Today is a very important show. It talks about mental health. It talks about life in general. It is about why psychotherapy should consider reincarnation. And we are honored to have here with us at Kardec Radio Dr. Julio Paris. Julio Paris is here from Brazil to tell us about his most important research, his article, scientific article published in a prestigious scientific journal, and also to talk about the amazing progress of the Spiritist mental health practitioners in Brazil in regards to embracing the Spiritist therapeutics and approach. But not only that, also making profound changes and transformation in the way we deal with mental issues and how we embrace a new approach to mental health. But before we get to the interview, we'd like to remind you that in 2 weeks, the 6th symposium in the United States of America is going to be in Atlanta, Georgia. Go to the spiritistsymposium.org website and get to know more about the information. It's a very important national movement and a meeting in the Spiritist movement in the United States, and the guest speaker is Dr. Mark Baker and his best-selling research and work on Jesus, the best psychotherapist of all times. Dear listener, you know we have a most important campaign going on, I Honor My Parents. You can go to the Spirit Side of Baltimore's website to get to know more about the campaign, participate, and also bring it to your location. You can get a wristband to promote the campaign, to raise the awareness on the importance of honoring our parents. It's beyond words, it's about feelings. It's about embracing respect, reverence, deference, as says Mentor Joseph, in regard to our parents, irrespective of their own actions. It's about our attitude towards them. Most important for our own vibratory field, for our own happiness. And we would like also to share with you that Kardec Radio has a most important program for the month of May. Pretty soon today, during this week, we're going to be releasing the beautiful programs that are going to be happening right here now. Just to give you a teaser, we're going to talk about sleeping dreams, also why Catholics should join Spiritists in embracing reincarnation with Professor Dr. Stafford Betty from the United States of America, and much more. Of course, a most important show about parenting and a new approach on parenting. Dear listener, we're going to a first short break, and when we come back, Dr. Julio Paris with us.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
The International Spiritist Council is organizing and promoting the 7th World Spiritist Congress, which will be held in Havana, Cuba on March 23rd through the 25th of 2013. The Congress theme will be Charity and Spiritual Education in Building a World of Peace. 150 years of the Gospel according to Spiritism. For more information, please visit www.7cem.org.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Join us every Thursday live, Evolution in Two Worlds, a journey of the soul through the teachings of the Spirit Doctor, Andrea Luiz. Connect at www.tvcei.com, Channel 2.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Greetings, this is Nara Dinditi with Succeed in America by Packaging Your Brilliance. Our topic today is 3 top accent reduction tips. We're constantly judged by what we say and how we say it. One of the things that could be in the way of a favorable image is a heavy accent. That's when accent reduction comes to the rescue. I actually call accent reduction an accent makeover. Why makeover? Just as accomplishing an image makeover, your unique personality is still there, but it's a better you. The same with an accent makeover. You still have an accent, but your speech is easy to understand, and you articulate your ideas more clearly and persuasively. And we know how important that is in business and in personal life. There are a number of tips that will help you effectively reduce your accent. I will list the top 3. First of all, when you speak English, speak slowly. The faster you speak, the heavier accent will be. For the average American speaker, the rate is not as fast as, say, in Indian languages. Here's a quick help for you. Stretch your vowel sounds and your speech will be slower and easier to understand. Next, enunciate. Enunciating means producing sounds very distinctly. Pay special attention to word endings and vowels. And finally, read aloud. Read aloud every day and tape yourself. Listen to the tapes. Critique yourself. Repeat words over and over. Remember, accent makeover takes practice. Yes, it could be a lot of work, but your efforts will be rewarded. If you can express yourself clearly and persuasively, you will build better relationships and achieve your career goals faster. This is Nara Dinditi with Succeed in America by Packaging Your Brilliance. If you have any questions, please email me at nara@succeedinamerica.com, NARASUCCEED in America.com. Or if you would like to have the transcript of this session, go to www.succeedinamerica.com/blog. And thank you for listening.
And now we return to our program.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paris, for being here with us at Kardec Radio. It's really an honor. And by the way, we are really happy to see the advancements of the community of scientists in Brazil, also in the collaborations with scientists in the U.S. and in England and other places, especially in regard to topics of the healing of the mind through the understanding of reincarnation. Julio, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. It's indeed a great pleasure to be here with you, Vanessa, and all of you, audience. It's a great pleasure.
So, Julio, you have published very recently an amazing article at a prestigious journal in the scientific community about, it's actually entitled, Should Psychotherapy Consider Reincarnation? So, our first question is, should psychotherapy actually consider reincarnation, and why?
That's a good question. Yes, indeed. Why? That's a long story, Vanessa. I will try to give a short tour.
Okay.
Exactly this answer I discussed in my recent publication in Journal of Nervous and Mental Disease.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's begin talking about there is an increasing recognition of the need to take into account the cultural environment and belief systems of psychotherapy patients. That's very important. Since these values reflect basic assumptions about man's nature and cognitive references used to cope and to deal with psychological difficulties. It's good to inform that currently accepted psychotherapeutic approaches take no account of the belief in life after death. That's terrible, because this belief is held by most of the world population. The World Value Survey, for instance, show that there are a large numbers of reincarnationists around the world. And whatever the reasons for believing in reincarnation, psychotherapy approaches should not ignore the significant group of people. In my opinion, respect for patient opinions and subjective realities is a therapeutic need and an ethical duty, even though therapists may not share the same beliefs. That's a very important issue. And in my recent publication, Should Psychotherapy Consider Reincarnation, I give some guidelines for professionals to develop collaborative models that help patients mobilize their intrinsic intelligence to find solutions to their complaints. So this subject is very complex, and I hope to give a short tour. So if you have any more questions,
yes,
let's
I think, Julio, what you're telling us, for example, majority of our listeners, if not all, they probably believe in reincarnation, and they are probably asking at this point, okay, so it's so hard to find a therapist who believes in what I believe. What if I find a good therapist that doesn't believe in what I believe? What can I do to tell this therapist that it's important that, not that they change their mind regarding their belief, but how can they help me by not dismissing my belief?
Yes. In this case, I would suggest to present this publication, the scientific publication, so the therapist may be informed about how to help the patient and mobilize this intrinsic intelligence to find solutions. It's very important to build a collaborative work with the patient. In case the therapist doesn't believe in reincarnation, this is not a problem, indeed. And this is the very point that I defend in my paper, because the patient can heal himself, not the therapist.
So, for example, I remember somebody coming to our center and saying, I found a good therapist, but when I mentioned about my feelings of previous lives with my ex-husband, she often said, oh, I don't talk about it because I don't know what to do with it. Should she quit? Or if she presents, or if this person presents to the therapist your article and they continue refusing it, even to consider, right?
That's a bad answer in case of this therapist. I would advise to search for an open mind therapist with, of course, a good formation, a consistent formation in psychotherapy. But it's important to quit narrow minds and search for open minds, so this collaborative work may be built in the therapeutic setting.
Because it's important, right? If it's a part of the patient's life, you cannot simply say, oh, well, and dismiss it. As you were talking about the need of people. So people would go through therapy because they are in need of professional help. Sometimes people think that to talk to a friend would be the same as talking to their therapist. What would be the difference there? Just so if people are asking out there, why is it so important to do psychotherapy, and the difference between talking to a friend and talking to a psychotherapist?
A therapist is supposed to have a good formation. So this talk is not any kind of talk inside the therapeutic setting. This is orientated talk, so the patient can inside many things to solve their problems. This is, in my opinion, the critical difference. A therapeutic talk is not like any other talk. It's an orientated talk to favor the solve of problems of this patient, not kind of just talking about things, whatever things are. It's very important to search good therapists with good formation, a consistent formation, so this talk can be orientated in the right sense.
And it's like it's not biased, right? Because there is a neutral component to when you talk to a psychotherapist that sometimes friends cannot be as neutral. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. Actually, a therapist is supposed to listen 80% and talk 20%. And when the therapist talk about the patient's problem, this talk is precise, must be sharp, right on the dot, to promote insights and self-resolutions of the problems and the complaints and so on.
So as you're talking about problems and issues, now we go to one of the main reasons also people see therapists, because they experience traumas, and traumas can block their lives. So what is the definition of trauma, so people who are listening to us can evaluate inside of them if this is enough evidence that they find inside of themselves to go find a professional help?
Trauma is a complex event, straight related to surprise. Let me put in other words. Freud stated that psychic trauma is a result of excessive excitement related to individuals' tolerance and capacity to integrate and psychically elaborate the stimulus. In other words, again, the way people process the stressor event after the occurrence is critical for a trauma to be configured or not. So a trauma, a stressor event, is not exactly a trauma, but can lead the patient or people to develop a trauma. However, Vanessa, there are several types of trauma. For instance, conscious trauma and unconscious trauma. Conscious trauma is linked to post-traumatic stress disorder and many others disorders like depression, like simple phobia, and so on. In post-traumatic stress disorder, it's important to clarify that it's characterized by the emergence of 3 sets of symptoms after the exposure to a traumatic event. The first one, experiencing trauma. That means nightmares, traumatic memories, intrusive thoughts, the thoughts that we don't want to think about, but they are intrusive. They just pass through our motivation about this specific thought related to trauma. The second symptom is related to emotional avoidance or a numbness. That means affective distance, emotional anesthesia that can occur as well. And the third symptom is related to hyperstimulation, like insomnia, hyperarousal, and so on. An unconscious trauma is pretty much related to symptoms without apparently a cause, or an orange that emerge the symptoms. In this case of unconscious trauma, the regression therapy may help, and we have very good outcomes with patients that develop symptoms without remembering the cause, the root of these symptoms. So the regression therapy can help these people to assign significance to the symptoms, and the outcome is very, very good. And we are happy with our results with regression therapy in this type of unconscious trauma.
Now we are going to a short break, and when we come back, we have more about psychotherapy and reincarnation.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Save the date for the 6th U.S. Spiritist Symposium that will be held at the Rialto Center for the Arts at Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia on Saturday, May 12, 2012. This year's topic is Love and Enlightenment, a Pathway to Self-Healing. Come out and enrich your mind, body, and soul. For more info, go to www.spiritistsymposium.org.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
The newest edition of the Medium's book by Allan Kardec is now available. Purchase your copy online or via your ebook reader. Simply go to www.ediciofamerica.com today.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Join us every Thursday live. Evolution in Two Worlds, a journey of the soul through the teachings of the Spirit Doctor, Andrea Luiz. Connect at www.tvcei.com, Channel 2.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Spiritism for Everyone, the online study of the Spirit's Book and the Gospel according to Spiritism. Spiritism for Everyone meets every Wednesday evening and Saturday morning using the latest technology in web conferencing. You can join in from any computer in the comfort of your home or office, no matter where you are in the U.S. or the world. Spiritism for Everyone is open, free, and requires no registration. To access the web live meetings, go to www.spiritus.us. Spiritism for Everyone is a program of the United States Spiritist Council.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we're here with Dr. Julio Pérez from Brazil. He's a psychologist and also a neuroscientist, and he has been working in collaboration with renowned scientists around the world, mainly Dr. Andrew Newberg from Penn State University. And we are here talking about why should psychotherapy consider reincarnation.
So these trauma that you're talking about that generate traumatic memories, I saw in your book, Trauma e Superação. It's a way to talk about overcoming trauma, and you talk about how psychology, neuroscience, spirituality teach us how to overcome traumas. In your chapter 9, you talk about something that many people may experience. For example, war veterans, they have traumatic memories, especially through dreams. Besides the whole information you share in your book, what is fascinating is about the exercises that you propose. It's very practical, the exercise. And in this chapter, you talk about imagery rehearsal therapy.
Glad you like it. Glad you like it. That's what we are here for.
Yeah, it's very practical because it's not only the theory behind it. It gives the reader also a practical tools to go there and say, hey, try this out, do this exercise. And this is what people need, and especially on this chapter, because many people are puzzled about dreams and the bad dreams or traumatic dreams. And then you come with this therapy, the image rehearsal therapy, and say, hey, you can go there. And what is that again that people could do with their bad dreams? What is that exercise? Can you explain to our listener?
Yes. Kingsbury, 20 years ago, realized that if patients with recurrent nightmares related to traumatic episodes could complete this nightmare in a good way. So, trauma is pretty much related to unfinished business. The process, it's not concluded yet. And when a person concludes this nightmare in a good way, he can exactly attenuate the symptoms related to the trauma, because he's finishing an unfinished business that we are named trauma. And this type of exercise is helping a lot many people. Dr. Krakow from the New Mexico University developed this type of exercise, therapeutic exercise, in many patients, and exactly the same protocol was replicated with other group in Australia, and the results are quite similar. The results are fantastic. Once you can complete an unfinished business, you may overcome gradually the symptoms related to the trauma.
That's quite interesting. And it's amazing you talk about how psychotherapy, in your chapter 11, you talk about the many cases of people who were helped through psychotherapy, because some people, they're afraid of going to psychotherapists. And at the end, we're going to talk about how we could identify a good therapist. But psychotherapy can really help people, as you show in many of the cases here. For example, the case that you talk about, the woman who had this uncontrolled fear, right? And how psychotherapy helped her overcome traumas. Because some people tell me, I can't believe just talking helps me overcome my trauma. And would you say it's not just talking?
Yes, it's not just talking, any type of talking. It's a specific orientated talk in the therapeutic setting. Yes, indeed, psychotherapy help people to overcome trauma, especially, Vanessa, because the way people process the stressor event is critical to determining whether a trauma will be configured or not. And neuroscience shows that the brain does not store memories, but traces of information that are later used to create memories, which do not always express a completely factual picture of the past experience. This is very interesting because the neurophysiology is in favor of psychotherapy in the sense, because whenever an event is reprised, it may undergo a cognitive and an emotional change, what I call psychological dynamics, or inner dialogue, an emotional interpretative tendency that affects the internal dialogue related to a meaningful event, may naturally influence the development of positive or negative outcomes of after stressful events. So I postulate that therapists must see beyond the traumatic event itself and work with the internal dialogues that maintain the pathological relationship with the past episode. Whenever you tell the story in an orientated way, guided in the therapeutic setting, you can reconstruct the story with other types of perceptions, build an alliance, learning exactly what life is trying to teach you to overcome the specific difficulty. This is the way I see how psychotherapy may help people to overcome trauma.
Yeah, so as you're saying, it's a much of also a physical change that it's promoting. So it's not something that is in the virtual space. It's actually changing also the way you process information in your physical brain, right?
That's true, yeah.
And another thing is, at the end of the cases you mentioned in Chapter 11, when you build like a 9-point list of the learnings from each of the patients who were overcoming trauma, and it's so inspirational, that gives empowerment to people, because they keep themselves imprisoned in their trauma because they can't see how external help can get them out of their prison.
Yes.
Right? And first thing, I want to read just a few of them so the listener has a feeling of how amazing this book and practical it is. It says, during the stressing event, try as much as possible to talk internally and elaborate the occurrence. And this is interesting because recently I heard that the National Public Radio, that there is a research by the National Institutes of Health promoting healing of these traumatic memories in war veterans in the United States by asking them to write their stories. And once they write it, the trauma seems to diminish.
Exactly. It's very important that psychotherapy, that's why, Vanessa, it's very important to cover subjective internal dialogues related to the trauma, making use of the subjective nature of human perception, the ability to emotionally reconstruct and reinterpret traumatic memories can also be used effectively in psychotherapy. And this is exactly what happens when people write about their memories, their traumatic memories. And however, it's interesting to note that the therapeutic effect occurs not only by confronting the traumatic memories, but in the way memories are retrieved to promote cognitive restructuring, reinterpretation about this painful event. It's crucial for psychotherapists to favor this type of resilient synthesis in the process of tell the story, and the process of the cognitive restructuring. For instance, another way that helps a lot is retrieving examples of individuals themselves being successful at other points in their life. For instance, I overcame a fear of dark when I was a little girl, a little boy. And what type of strategy you use to overcome this fear? It's important to retrieve techniques, strategies that the patient already used in a good way and overcame fears or difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
This is another way that can help a lot to regain satisfactory quality of life in terms of overcoming this specific traumatic event, and that's what we can see in a very positive way in the therapeutic process.
So one of the things that people who experience trauma is that they feel sorry for themselves or self-pity. It's probably, as you say here, the patient needs to make efforts to avoid self-pitying.
Exactly.
Right? Why is it important to refrain from thinking that, oh, it's not fair, why did it happen to me, etc.? Why is it so important not to do it to promote the healing?
Because self-pity frees people in a place of pain. It doesn't promote any help in the therapeutic process. And on the other hand, if you search learning, if you build an alliance with this painful event, what life is teaching me, what type of opportunity I do have exactly at this point in my life. So the place you are occupying is quite different, and this type of place promotes healing. That's for sure.
Is that why you also mentioned on point 9 about we need to speak about that painful feeling, but with the right people? Is it because, for example, especially, for example, in the United States, in the world, when trauma happens, traumatic situations, tragedies, people tend to talk about it again and again and again and again and again, and to anybody. And what is the problem of talking about our painful situations or the painful feelings or the traumatic feelings to whomever shows up in our lives? How can that create an obstacle to the healing?
Yes, if you talk about the trauma in a wrong way to process this event in terms of resilience, you can re-traumatize yourself. You can touch the pain again and again without healing yourself. That's why I postulate that you must search for good ears to listen much more listen to talk or to advice. So religion, in this case, spiritism, a very nice help to these people, because religiousness and spirituality give a frame, a cognitive frame, to develop another interpretation about this traumatic event. The opportunity to learn something and to develop an even better quality of life today, considering the learning in process. And I think religiousness and spirituality may help a lot. And many articles suggest the same thing. We have thousands of publications, scientific publications, which highlight the importance of religiousness and spirituality concerning the overcoming of the trauma or difficulties, adversities that is quite nature in human life.
That's very interesting. You say that Spiritism, religiosity, and gender spirituality can bring this cognitive framework. It's very interesting the way you propose it. And also, as you say, that people in your list, number 4 is about exactly what you're saying as well. Number 4 and 5 about you people who have traumas and painful situations inside of them. They need to make efforts to believe, to hope, and believe in good, and also have a good, solid foundation, a religious foundation to minimize pain.
We will return to our program after these messages.
For the first time ever, the book Between Heaven and Earth by the spirit André Luiz, psychographed by Chico Xavier, is now in English. This is a novel that offers information about the relationship that exists in the activities of the spirit on the 2 planes of life. Purchase your copy today at www.ediseiofamerica.com.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Now in English, the book Action and Reaction by the spirit André Luiz, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediseiofamerica.com today. The International Spiritist Council is organizing and promoting the 7th World Spiritist Congress, which will be held in Havana, Cuba on March 23rd through the 25th of 2013. The Congress theme will be Charity and Spiritual Education in Building a World of Peace. 150 years of the Gospel according to Spiritism. For more information, please visit www.7cem.org.
And now we return to our program.
Is it true that when people talk about their traumatic experiences, they are triggering the same physiological experience in their bodies?
Yes, indeed. An interesting point here concerning spirituality and religiousness. We published 2 studies about the neurobiological effects of psychotherapy. One of them showed that religiousness and spirituality are linked straight to resilience, exactly because this cognitive framework that people can absorb some learning, some knowledge concerning this traumatic event. And psychotherapy indeed may change the quality of life and also the neural expressions of traumatic events. As I said, we published 2 studies about that. And the first one in a Cambridge journal named Psychological Medicine in 2007. The title of this article is Cerebral Blood Flow Changes During the Retrieval of Traumatic Memories Before and After Psychotherapy. The other one is more recent. was published in the Journal of Psychiatric Research in 2011. And the name of this article is Police Officers Under Attack, Resilience, Implications of an fMRI Study. The police officers that show religiousness and spirituality develop what we call an spontaneous resilience. And this is very important to consider. Very important. Both studies, Vanessa, showed the neurobiological effects of psychotherapy apply to traumatized people. And our results provide neurophysiological evidence of resilience. We can learn resilience through psychotherapy. Psychotherapy may indeed help to build narrative and positive or resilient integrate translations of the trauma. And especially the medial prefrontal cortex was involved in this type of cognitive processing. They weaken their sensory content of trauma events while strengthening the same events cognitively. And so this orientated talk helps and a lot. And we see in our brain the results, the neurobiological effects of psychotherapy, a good psychotherapy for sure.
So now when we go back to that issue of reincarnation, and we know that some traumas are deeply rooted in previous lives issues as well as a continuum, to whom would you specifically recommend regression therapy? Because there are people, as you know, who simply come and say, I just want to know who I was, and they think regression therapy is just an entertainment. To whom would you recommend regression therapy, and specifically to trauma patients? How can regression therapy still be effective? Because I know your mother was the pioneer of the technique in Brazil, right?
Yes.
Dr. Maria Julio Pérez.
Exactly. I would recommend the regression therapy to the people that cannot localize the root of their symptoms, like simple phobia or a disorder like depression and panic disorder, so on. Once you identify the root, you can disattach yourself of this root. So this type of therapy is very recommended to people that cannot localize the root of these symptoms. There are many people who develop some type of difficulty related to their son, or a specific son. Why I cannot relate it? I cannot express my love, my affection to this son especially. So this type of therapy, regression therapy, may help to localize why and favor the self-resolution of this conflict and the symptom related to this trauma. But it's important to remember a recent article in New York Times reported something that called my attention. Interest in reincarnation is on the rise. I don't remember exactly the words, but they said something like, interest in reincarnation is on the rise, and its purveyors are not monks or theologians, but therapists. I think this article was published in 2011 by Miller. I must warn of the risks that reincarnationists run due to practice of pseudotherapists and fears driven by financial interest and manipulation. Importantly, books on past life regression have become bestsellers and been rewarded with substantial amount of money, although some writers lack clinical training in psychotherapy. It's very clear, Vanessa. Their superficial contents show that they obviously, for sure, have never personally been submitted to the psychotherapeutic process. I would also warn against practical manuals and CDs or DVDs induce people to do it yourself and find out who you were in your past life.
Wow.
This is terrible because mere curiosity is contraindicated as a subject for a therapeutic process. This is very important to highlight here. Psychotherapy, Vanessa, must be conducted only by psychologists, in my opinion, that have undergone training in order to work with the psychological dynamics of their patients, and who realize that the contents of reincarnation raised during psychotherapy must be properly processed, assigning meanings to anxiety or specific phobia, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms may indeed help patients who do not locate the events that lead to their suffering in the present life, as I said before. And the combination of the learning with the contents of supposed previous lives or previous lives expressed spontaneously, for instance, recurring dreams or perceptions, may be addressed by psychotherapy so that patients' present lives are enhanced rather than lingering on suffering derived from these contents.
That's very interesting.
I appreciate the opportunity to clarify issue because, in my opinion, it's very, very important. A regression therapy is a deep surgery in an unconscious field. And if, Vanessa, this surgery is conducted by not very well formed psychotherapists, this may cause worse problems that the people brought as a complaint to psychotherapy.
Yeah, you said it's very important. As you mentioned previously, though it's very universal, the concept you brought in, when you talked about the Spiritist teachings and the practice, there is a book, as you know, by the Spirit Doctor André Luiz, The Messengers, when he talks about a case of somebody who used the capacity of remembering previous lives and really changed his life completely, derailed emotionally, spiritually, and made others also derail as they had access to information that probably shouldn't have been brought to light, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can be dangerous.
It can be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
I can see in my office, Vanessa, many patients that tried some, I would say, not very well formed professionals or psychotherapists, or just contact a CD or DVD that induced something like I said, do it yourself, and great problems arise from this experience. So the surgery that we are talking about related to unconscious contents must be very well done. And that's my point.
Dear listener, we're going for a short break, and when we come back, we have the last part of the interview with Dr. Julio Perry.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Enjoy this new release. Reborn for Love, by the renowned Brazilian scientist and researcher on reincarnation, Dr. Hernani Andrade. This novel describes one of the most extraordinary and genuine cases of reincarnation ever studied by Dr. Andrade's Brazilian Institute of Psychobiophysics Research in Sao Paulo State. Order your copy now at roundtable.uk@gmail.com or at www.roundtablepublishing-uk.com.
Spiritist Network, your gateway to on-demand Spiritist videos. www.spiritistnetwork.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Want to find a good way to explain life after physical death to kids or teenagers? Check out the book Message from a Teen in the Spirit World by the Spirit Neo Lucio and Psychographed by Chico Xavier. In this book, a teenager named Carlos explains his impressions on the new life in the spirit realm with his discarnate relatives and new friends. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
The Spiritist Magazine is a trimestral digital periodical that publishes the latest news on the Spiritist thought and the movement in the USA and worldwide. Subscribe now at www.spiritistmagazine.com.
In the book, A Primer on Being Good by the Spirit May May, psychographed by the medium Chico Xavier, explains in simple language appropriate for children two paths in life, the path of good or the path of evil. God has granted us the freedom to choose either one. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
Now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we're here in our last part of the interview with Dr. Julio Perry, a psychologist and a neuroscientist and also a spiritist who has been making an immense difference in the realm of mental health, its research, and its healing approach. Dr. Julio.
In general, how can people identify a good therapist? I'll give an example about, the problems. The listener may be here now asking the very question. The other day, somebody approached us and said, I don't like going to my therapist because it seems that he doesn't understand me, and there is a cultural difference, and they don't want me to talk about my belief system, as we said before, or they even sleep when I'm talking. So how can we identify a good therapist?
Yeah, unbelievable. Doing the second therapy, that's unbelievable. But unfortunately, Vanessa, we don't have yet a consistent education for therapists in this field that consider the belief system the reincarnation possibility of the patients brought to therapy. In my article is the very first scientific publication about psychotherapy and reincarnation. I'd say fortunately, but on the other hand, unfortunately, because this field was neglected so many times. There must be efforts made to add discussion of the reincarnation belief system to the curriculum in psychological and medical schools. Discussion with students, for instance, on different concepts, research on the subject, comprehension of proper and suitable process in relation to using religious and spiritual practice will contribute for sure to better quality in meeting patients' needs, reducing prejudice, leading to better informed and well-trained professionals. This is very important. We must include this type of discussion inside the academic scope, because just as when we seek to test the entire personal dimension of human experience, integration of patients' reincarnation belief dimensions in their treatment requires high standards of professionalism and ethics. And this is what I discuss in this publication. Should psychotherapy consider reincarnation? Yes, but in an ethic and right way, so the patient can be benefited.
So
I would suggest, indeed, the patients, I like to underline this, take this publication for their therapist. They feel like a narrow approach concerning their belief system. And we are planning to open a workshop in Miami in order to teach how to approach this matter, reincarnation and psychotherapy.
Is it going to be in a professional setting or spiritist setting?
In a professional setting, this workshop will be addressed to psychotherapists. And if you allow me, in case psychologists are interested, please send an email to contato, C-O-N-T-A-T-O, contact in Portuguese, contato at julioperez.com.br.
Okay. To know about where it is. Now, one of the questions that you would recommend that your patient prepares themselves to before the therapy or the psychotherapy by saying a prayer, counting on the presence of the guardian angel to guide the therapy, especially when you say about regression therapy being a surgery of the unconscious. So you would count on a team work effort of both worlds, right? So you would recommend it?
Yes, absolutely. Once this belief belongs to the patient, if the patient feels that this pray before the psychotherapy, it's an important way and will help, that's for sure. Absolutely, you can make the prayer or something else to help the process. We must respect the belief systems of the patient, so the patient get better and better once we respect the way the patient see the world. We don't need to convince patients. This is not what the therapists do in the work, but we need to receive this belief system as open as we can in order to provide tools to the patient overcome his complaint.
And as you propose in your chapter 12, you propose that the professional ask themselves several questions such as, am I prepared to listen to reports that people who are undergoing trauma? Because these are specialized types of therapists, right? Not every therapist is prepared. It's like a subfield of psychotherapy, right? To listen to trauma, because we are human beings as well, and it can impact the therapist, right?
Exactly.
So the other question, because of these implications, as you say, we should avoid generating another trauma because of the trauma. For example, somebody, as you say, somebody killed my son, and then I want to go there and kill the killer of my son, and it's like a trauma after trauma, and it just worsens it. So you're talking also about a moral component here that can affect. So can you tell us how the patient can deeply heal themselves by observing their own ethical, moral alignment or principles?
Yes. Post-traumatic growth is related straight to the strength of the virtues and character. There are many scientific publications that show this very interesting issue. Once you strengthen the virtues and the character, you may overcome the trauma. It's quite interesting. People who would like to know about that, please go to my website and see articles in Portuguese, artigos.
Okay.
And you will see post-traumatic growth for a deep understanding about that. And if you can, in the therapeutic setting, develop the character, the virtues, you may naturally overcome the trauma. That's what my experience shows, and many articles, scientific articles, show as well.
All right. Julio, we're really thankful for your time and for being with here, clarifying and also bridging it up. What would you be your final comments to the listener who is deeply interested in bridging up, like how psychotherapy can build more healing by considering reincarnation? To the listener, especially to the therapist, it was clear cut, and also to the listener who is also willing to be healed at that level.
Trauma prophylaxis is an even greater and more crucial challenge, and one that we must all address. in my opinion, this is very important, related to all of us. Traumatic events are largely man-made. For example, war, violence, terrorist attacks, sexual abuse, so on. I would say building and strengthening a culture of peacefulness in our mental and outward actions may pose good examples of perceptual synthesis that spread out the same balance, the same way to conduct life. That with those, that's what I see in my everyday life. With those, the occurrence of traumatic events and consequently the prevalence of psychological trauma in the world. This is our challenge. All of us, we should build and strengthen a culture of peacefulness. And Reincarnation is all about this, development, spiritual development. And that's what I would like to say as my final thoughts.
All right.
I really appreciate this opportunity to share this little contribution concerning this recent publication in Journal of Neuromental Disease. And I hope this publication helps as much as it can.
All right. Thank you so much, Julio, and we would like to have you back sometime in the near future to talk about some other things that you have been doing.
Sure.
Yeah, dear listeners, grateful as we are to these very special moments to Dr. Julio and this most important information about why reincarnation should be considered in psychotherapy. Now we're going to leave you with the beautiful segments by Kirsten de Mello, Dr. Margalian, Noel Fonseca, Gabi Ferreira, Bernadette Vial. We hope you enjoy it. And when we come back, we're going to do our last prayer for the beauty of healing of the mind.
Hello, dear Kardec Radio listeners, and welcome back to the Spiritist Moment. Today, our topic will be about error and atonement, based on the book Living and Loving. It is message 15, and the book was psychographed by Divaldo Franco, dictated by the spirit Joanna De Angelis. In this message, entitled Error and Atonement, Joanna opens up with a topic that is very closely related to our topic at Kardec Radio today, reincarnation. Because we cannot discuss about reincarnation without talking about the law of progress. And Joanna opens up her message with the law of progress. And she says, quote, "The law of progress, which regulates the evolutionary process, confirms Christ's saying that the Father does not wish the end of the sinner, but the end of sin." So what does this tell us, dear listeners? If we dive deep into the message, this simple sentence, but has a profound meaning. What does this mean for us? Well, for one, we are destined for greatness. That along our evolutionary path, at the end is our perfection, depending upon how hard we work on ourselves or not. But ultimately, because the law of progress is always in effect for all creatures of God, we are bound for that type of perfection. Joanna goes on to say that our ancestral heritage is responsible for many atavistic negative habits. So what does that mean? Well, over many lifetimes, we bring our negative tendencies and our good ones with us. And sometimes they plague our human nature, as Joanna says. But due to our great suffering, it implores us, it impels us to push us forward, for us to work on ourselves. As Joanna says, it fosters moral development. And we need this education to overcome it, to overcome our suffering, as Joanna shares with us in these messages. So also, she shares with us that science, art, and technology help to create new conditions for spiritual unfoldment and durable peace. So we learn that the evolution of humanity as we know it, evolution of society, technology, helps us nowadays more than ever with the advent of the internet and multimedia that exists. Today, nowadays, we can do visual meditation. We can do meditation with a PowerPoint. We can help others do meditation. Much more easier, much more tangible. In art, we gain inspiration. We feel uplifted. So we see that Joanna's message rings true, that we can find and create these new conditions for our own spiritual unfoldment, our own spiritual development, and everyday technology and science and art. They help us to grow. However, she says, society is still not far enough advanced. There is still much poverty in human rights. We still have a long way to go in our evolutionary path, she shares with us. Well, some tips she gives us in this evolutionary path, in our many incarnations, no matter where we are, no matter who we are. She gives us tips, and these are the tips we will leave you with today, dear listeners. And Joanna says, no matter where we're at in life, we're working on ourselves. Also, combat wrongdoing wherever you come across it, but educate the wrongdoer. When we're talking about the law of progress affects all of us, well, good or bad, strong or weak, the more knowledge we have, the more responsible we are to help one another. So she says, combat wrongdoing, yes, but also educate the wrongdoer. Restrain crime, but rehabilitate the criminal. Avert violence, but pacify the violent. Abhor evil whenever you detect it, but remember to help the evildoer. How many times, dear listeners, on our evolutionary path do we find these pebbles? Do we also find and can't help but recognize the quote-unquote evil that exists? But Joanna beautifully, in the end of the message, inspires us with the positive attitude. She tells us that we should, when we're confronted with evil, the positive attitude we should have to strengthen the action of good. Because that's what the good and noble spirits share with us in the Spirit's book, that evil continues to grow strong because the good are not courageous enough to stand up. And lastly, she shares with us, instead of accusations or criticisms, we should help the mistaken person to deliver himself from evil. Always remembering that Jesus did not condone error, but he never ceased to educate, to help, and to uplift those who have erred. So, dear friends, these are the thoughts we leave you with as we think about and reflect about the law of progress and our multiple and many reincarnations that we should continue to work on ourselves and also assist others and not just judging. And as always, dear friends, we wish you many blessings.
Welcome to our Youth Education in Spiritism with the Kardec Radio. I am Bernadette Leal, and I'll be spending a few minutes with you, inspiring to bring spiritual awareness and spiritist teachings to our youth, parents, and educators. Today, we will answer 3 questions about the influence of home in the moral development of a child. First question. How does the home environment influence on the moral formation of a child? In order to answer this question, first, we would like to mention the answer to question 892 of the Spirit's book about parents' responsibility. It says, parents have been entrusted with the education of their children. Their mission is to make every possible effort to bring their children back onto the right path. The education that we would like to focus here is not the intellectual one, but the moral education of the child. We know that every family has different moral values. So when we talk about moral education, it is the one taught by Jesus and the great masters of humanity, which is to treat others the way you want to be treated, love your neighbor, compassion, patience, respect, and also teaching about choices and consequences and how our actions can affect others. But where does the moral education start? At home. The child will become what they have learned at home. So the more solid moral education the child has learned and experienced, the more she'll be able to handle and transform negative influences and behavior outside home, knowing not only how to make wise choices, but also how to treat others well. One serious problem that we have nowadays is that parents are leaving to the school and teachers to do the moral education, moving away from the full responsibility of parenthood. Then later, parents complain when their children show a selfish behavior, when in fact there was no time spent on the child's moral development. Remember, children are like clay, and the figure will be a representation of what they were molded. Children learn by example, and they will be confused if they have parents or caregivers who are not consistent on what they say and do. How can we ask a child to be understanding and treat others with respect when she hears us talking bad about our neighbors or someone in the family? How can we expect a child to be loving and peaceful when she has seen their parents emotionally and physically abusing each other? We can start by assessing our home environment by asking ourselves, is my house a peaceful place? Do my children feel safe at home? Are there a lot of arguments, yelling, and name-calling at home? We all know that there are challenges and some stressful situations in our lives and family at times, but there is always a peaceful way of handling any problem and showing a good example of conduct. A home should be a sanctuary. Second question. I've been raising all my children the same way and noticed that in spite of my efforts, they show very different behavior. Why? Well, this is a question that Spiritism can help us to answer. Although in a young body, every child is, in fact, an old spirit who lived many lifetimes. She will show not only the progress that she has made, but also weaknesses and negative tendencies that upon which she needs to work. Therefore, each child is a unique spirit. A parent who is attentive will start to notice their children's tendencies and should help them to improve and work on their moral development. It is like driving a car. Depending on the road and where we want to go, we have to turn the steering wheel to the right or to the left or make some stops. Each child is a spirit who has a different road to travel, and it is the parent's responsibility to steer the wheel when children are growing up to keep them on the right path and not drive off a cliff or have accidents that can harm not only themselves but others as well. Certainly, we have offered them equal amount of unconditional love, but educationally speaking, they should be raised differently because each child is a different spirit with different needs. Observe your child's tendencies from the cradle, as says St. Augustine in chapter 14, item 9 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, and you will see and be able to customize your educational approach with each of your children. After all, a parent is an educator. Third question. My child is angry, raises his voice, and sometimes ignores me. What should I do? The most important thing that parents can do for their children is to love them, You may not like or love what they do, but you should love them unconditionally. Children need to know that they are loved and feel loved. So when a child or teenager shows, for instance, a defiant behavior or seem angry, it is because they are trying to communicate something. They may be unhappy or frustrated, but in fact, they lack the skills to talk about their feelings and do not know how to handle their frustrations. So when you are facing a situation in which your child is acting out, yelling, or ignoring you, the first question is to ask yourself, what is my child trying to tell me? There are two ways in which you can interpret a child's behavior. It is through action or reaction. For instance, let's say your child is throwing a tantrum for not getting what she wants. A reaction is, what a brat! She needs some spanking, which is, by the way, something we do not encourage here, or she needs a time out. Now here's the action. Wow, my child has not learned yet how to be patient and is showing selfish behavior. I need to work on help her to be more understanding. Another example. Let's say that your teenager is spending most of the time at the computer and ignoring you. Reaction. What a selfish son I have. He does not care about his parents. Action. I need to spend more time with my son and show interest in what he likes. The challenge in interpreting the communication with the action perspective is that we may find out that the problem starts with the parents, and they are not ready to hear that. Well, it is true that sometimes the problem has to do with parenting, but it's also where we may find the solution. Kardec Radio listeners, home is where the education of the spirit starts. Leaving the parenting job to school or society can have serious consequences. We know a real story of a parent who wanted to raise her child setting no limits or letting her make her own choices instead of guiding her in her behavior or in her moral and spiritual growth. As a result, the child grew up with no empathy toward others, showing selfish behavior, and with no spiritual connection to God. Today, her mother regrets and wishes she had raised her daughter differently. Parents and educators, children need limit, guidance, consistency, and education in all areas, physically, intellectually, morally, and spiritually. Let's guide them in a loving and conscious way so they can make smart choices in life and become responsible adults with great moral values. Let's love them. And as Dr. Wayne Dyer said, by giving children lots of affection, you can help fill them with love and acceptance of themselves. Then, that's what they will have to give away. Thanks for listening to Yes. And if you have any questions that would like us to answer, please email to kardec@kardecradio.com.
Dear listeners, we invite you now to a prayer. Let us pray that all therapists, physicians, psychologists in general feel the blessing of the call of their duty in embracing their instrumental role in the healing of the mind. May sooner than later they feel that there is more than the eyes can see, and the need to embrace greater understanding of the human mind to find deeper healing. We wish you, dear listener, also many blessings. And next week when we come back, we're going to be here with the most beautiful program on the Spiritist view on parenting.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio. broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.